Through the chair, you're live on HCAM TV.
Looks like we're still waiting for a chair and quorum.
So Matthew, we've got 6 at this point.
Am I not? Okay, a bunch of people just showed up on my list.
Yeah, I've got you, Lucia, Lise, Parker, Karen, and Jane. If I didn't call somebody's name, let me know. I missed you.
Yeah, I didn't see Karen and Elise until a second ago. Is Rob dialing in, or is he?
I don't know. I'm sure he'll log in soon. Michael is joining right now as well. So now you've got.
Okay. Give everybody another 2 minutes till 7:03 or so. I think we started the last one at 7:04, so maybe we'll go to them. If my mic starts cutting out as well, please let me know. Zoom was doing some weird things when I was testing earlier.
There's some weird background noise from somebody.
Jane, can you mute? It might be coming from you. Like you're the only other one unmuted. Jane, can you mute your microphone?
I'll try. Zoom is doing some weird stuff.
That fix it, Rob.
Yep. All right, let me get started by reading the remote meeting script, and we'll go from there. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body as well as members of the public may access this meeting via virtual means. Participants may access this meeting through the remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will confirm attendance of members. Please respond with present if you're on the call. Elise Mayalowski.
Present.
Lucia Lopez.
Present.
Matthew Ronca.
Present.
Michael King.
Present.
Parker.
Present.
Jane.
Present.
Karen Wills.
Present.
Vikasath Pratzi. Is Vic on?
Vic said he
not.
might be running late today.
All right. And Rob is here. And now staff, John Gelsich
Present.
and Lori St. John.
Present.
All right. Awesome. All right. I'm going to get right into our agenda. Approval of bond amount and Form E for the Jeff Diana project that we talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago. So this is the applicant submitted a Form G to establish a bond for the work required as part of the recently approved Nebraska Street subdivision. The applicant initially proposed the bond amount of $124,694.40. The review of the work and proposed amount from Ty and Bond will be provided ahead of the meeting. The board also needs to review and approve the Form E if the information contained in the document is acceptable to the board. John, I didn't see the new amount from Ty and Bond.
Yeah, they didn't send a new amount, so they did a review a little bit differently. They said that the amount, if you look at the review, it's in the shared folder, it says that the amount is generally correct, but there were 2 comments. If the labor and equipment costs were specifically referenced for the installation of the subsurface infiltration system, and if they are not included in that cost, then the applicant should provide that information. And then they asked that the applicant include the cost for the removal of the pump bypass structure and reconnecting the pipes with a water tank connection as shown on the plan. So I passed this information along to the applicant and just asked them to provide updated information on how that would impact the bond amount.
All right, Jeff, I see you're on. Are you speaking for yourself here, or do you get
Yes.
somebody? All right, go ahead.
All right. So the first one was the Cultec chambers, and I put the one price for the chambers, which covered the cost of the chambers, and then on the separate page, I put the price for the installation and the labor of the chambers. So that was on there, and I think their question was, like, I have Schedule 40 pipe and 6-inch pipe, and I had it all by the foot. And I think their question on that was, by the foot, was the labor and everything included in that? And yes, it is included in my price, the labor.
And John, we don't have anyone from Ty and Bond on, do we?
No.
And the other thing, John, the watertight connection, there was a lot on this plan, and I did not on purpose, but it was a brass coupling, and it's about $100 for it, for the connection, the connection piece. And the removal of the pump chamber, usually whenever I do septics and stuff like that, you just abandon them in place. You just fill them with clean fill that's on site. That's usually how that works.
So, Jeff, on the plans, I didn't have a chance to look at them. How many of those connections were required, those brass connections?
Just one.
Just one?
Yeah.
So it would be up to the board to determine if the amount that the applicant has submitted for the bond is appropriate, or if that should be increased. And if
it would just be an extra $100. It was $75 for the brass fitting. I just figured 100.
I can't think of a time we've had this come up where the consultant basically said it's generally in line. Usually it's either it's in line or it's not.
Rob, the explanation for that is this is technically a subdivision, but it's really more like an A&R. So,
yeah,
when we have subdivisions, we've got more than one house being built, and this is basically a road that's already been built, and they're just trying to make the connection to the new driveway.
I don't know John, you don't have to answer this, but do you have a recommendation here?
It's a bond, so it's basically money to pay for the work. If the applicant decides to abandon the project, then the town has to complete it. I don't foresee the applicant abandoning the prospect of building a house next to his parents, but if the board feels strongly about adding additional money to that bond in case that situation were to happen, then I think they're within their rights.
Through the chair, I think the bond as set is appropriate. the applicant seems to be a reasonably settled resident in Hopkinton and is going to see through the project, given the intent is to take care of his father.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any comments? I am in agreement, Parker. All right.
So you would just need to have a motion to set the bond amount for the Nebraska Street subdivision at $124,694.40.
All right. So I'd like to entertain a motion to set the bond for Nebraska Street project for Jeff Diana for $124,694.40.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Parker. Roll call vote. Elise Malowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronka,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vic, I don't see yet, and Rob Benson is a yes. All right, Jeff, you're all set.
All right,
Sorry.
thank you. Appreciate
Hold
it.
on, Jeff. Through the chair, there was a second part. of
Oh,
this,
that's right.
The Form E. So the Form E, sorry, through the chair, if I can just explain what the whole
sure.
process is.
Please, please do.
Yeah, the Form E is a standard process for the subdivision approval. So it basically just is an agreement between the applicant and the town saying that all this work is going to be done and you abide by the conditions of the approval, et cetera, et cetera. We had found out that you guys were supposed to be signing this all along, and there was never an extra form to sign these. So now we're going to start having you sign these like Form Ks, like you're supposed to. So
So you're going to have the board sign the Form E's going forward.
yes, so we used to just not have the Form E signed. So
So
learn
how?
something new every day.
So is this just a formality like that we?
Yeah. So in the past, the board used to basically just accept the Form Es, and then that was kind of it. But now it's an official approval, and we just need the board to come in and sign.
Is there any motion we need to take on this?
Yeah. So it would be for the board to approve the Form E as provided.
All right. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve Form E as provided.
Point of inquiry. So this is just acknowledging. Oh no. So this is this is from the as submitted by the applicant, but it acknowledges what we've already decided.
So let me share it with you. Get it up on the screen. So the Form E, so this is basically an edited version of what is in our subdivision regulations. It basically just says that they're not going to be able to build anything on the subdivision until the road is constructed or there's a performance bond. So they've now provided an estimate for the performance bond. So that'll satisfy this. And then it's just other legal stuff saying that this decision applies to them and any situations that might impact that. And then also you agree to the conditions on Exhibit A, which is just the planning board decision. So this is essentially a state form. It's required part of the subdivision control law rather than like a local Hopkinton form. So it's just stuff that needs to get signed and then recorded in the registry.
Any other questions? Would anyone like to move the
proposed motion?
Yes, the proposed motion.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Michael. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronka,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. Now I think we're all set. All right. Good luck, Jeff.
All right, thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda item is our meeting minutes from our December 2nd meeting. Is there any suggested edits? Did any edits make it to Lori beforehand? Go ahead, Matthew. You're muted, Matthew.
Sorry, double clicked. One proposed edit of reordering and one point of inquiry. So we had, I think Patriots Day and Rosh Hashanah I thought were stricken from the list of dates. Are those officially posted? Are we planning to meet on those days? Because they were listed in the minutes, so should they be listed with the dates there, or should they be removed from that list?
They could be removed. I mean, they were probably listed because they're in the memo, but just struck out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I would propose if we're not planning to meet there, attempt to not have them listed. The other thing was to just to move the closing of the public hearing to the final motion of the section on was the Nebraska Street section, I think. Yeah, on page. Just move the closing of that to the last motion in that section.
Do you get that, Lori?
I did. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board approve the meeting minutes of December 2nd, 2024 with the suggested amendments by Matthew.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks, Michael. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati.
I've just joined, so sorry, I missed the motion.
Do you want to just abstain?
Yes,
Oh,
I've seen.
okay. Rob Benson is a yes. It's just approving our meeting minutes. I think. All right, let's move on. Agenda item number 2, 4852 Main Street. I think what I'd like to do is ask the applicant for any update, and then maybe John, if there's any update from you or anything new or anything you want to remind us of, that'd be great. But to start with the applicant, is there any, if you want to kick us off with where things are from your perspective, anything we should be aware of, anything new, that would be great.
Neil, you're muted.
This is Neil Bingham for the applicant from the Law Office of Jerry C. Efron. I'm here with Brendan Giblin from the ownership group, as well as our engineer, Eric DeBrule, and Richard Rankin of Rankin Associates. So I think you're familiar with what the project is generally, but since our last substantive meeting, there are two larger things that have occurred and that we have been responsive to. The first is that we've gotten further comments from Weston and Sampson, the peer reviewer, who provided further comments to our responses. I'd characterize that letter as a very positive letter, but within it, it contained a number of items that are described as open items. So we'd like an opportunity just to describe our responses to those, and I'll lead that off in a moment with Eric DeBrule, who will touch on some of the open items, and of course any other questions that you may have. And then the other thing that happened is that we received comments, proposed approval with recommendations from Design Review Committee. And since receiving those, we've done some revisions to our elevation plans, and we'd like to show you what those are. We've tried to be very responsive to their recommendations, and I think we've done a pretty nice job there. So unless there's another issue that you would like to address before we get into touching on those things, I'd hand things over to Eric DeBrule, our engineer from Bowler, to discuss the open items from that letter.
All right, just so the board can follow along, is this the letter dated December 11th, 2024, second engineering peer review, 6 Cedar Street and 4852 Main Street? Is that the letter? All right.
That is the letter. And then if you're following along, Weston and Sampson did a nice job of highlighting the open issues in a red font. So those are primarily the issues that we're going to be talking about.
All right, for anybody that's following along on the board in our Google Drive, it's the letter titled Main Street 48-52, revised peer review letter dated 12/11/24 in our Google shared folder. All right.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Neil. For the record, Eric DeBrule with Bowler. Again, just going to walk through one of the 3 open items that we wanted to talk to, and then I'll hand it over to Rich Rankin to talk to 2 of those items, which are more architectural based. But just a quick recap. I know we're before the board October 21st for the first hearing. Peer review received their first full response letter on 11/4. We provide our response 11/25, and then what we're talking about today again is that 12/12 letter in their final responses. So I'll quickly share the screen just for convenience. So the very first one that we wanted to talk about, and again, I think we're very amenable to all the open items, which are listed in red in the letter. The few that we wanted to talk to, I just boxed out in blue. The first one is under the subcategory of stormwater management. It has very specifically to do with stormwater test pits being conducted and the request that the board may wish to condition that we provide that information. We respectfully request that it's not conditioned to provide it. We aren't providing stormwater infiltration on this project. We're significantly reducing the impervious surface to get additional infiltration. So by not providing the infiltration system, we don't think it's necessary to provide stormwater test pits to confirm groundwater and soil conditions for that purpose. I see Tony's on. I'm sure you can speak to that a little bit more, but that is a very specific one on the civil. I'm going to turn, I think, over to Rich, and Rich, I'll scroll up to the next one, which is relative to the exhaust in the garage.
Eric, that sounds good. I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Thanks, Eric, again. Thanks, members of the board. For the record, it's Richard Rankin, Rankin Associates Architects. And I don't know if we're going to be jumping back and forth, Eric, but we'll start here with the lower garage. And there was a question with regard to natural ventilation versus mechanical ventilation. And it's our intent currently to classify this structure as open and to be naturally ventilated. If during the design process we choose to mechanically ventilate the 2 levels, we will vent them up adjacent to the stair shaft vertically and up through the roof. I think similar to this slide, we've got the same condition on the second level of parking. And again, we feel we have enough open area to allow for natural ventilation, and we'll confirm that, but currently that's the plan. Okay, do you want me to continue with
Why don't we does anyone before you move on from the ventilation, like I I think from my point of view, it's there is a residence right, like so in this picture, right to the left, the lot right next to that, and then there's also a restaurant right to the top side of this image. So, I guess my concern is there could be an issue down the road, and how to ensure that is prevented, like now. How do we? And so, I think this is really the first time in my time on the board, which is almost 5 years, that we've had a situation like this where there's a parking garage being built in Hopkinton that has a restaurant and a home like right next to it. So how do you measure the exhaust? How can you kind of assure the abutters that there's no detrimental effect to their properties and to the restaurant, like people eating at the restaurant? How do you test that? How do you know?
So we have the surface lot here currently, which really currently exists. This whole lot is parking currently, besides the footprint of the drugstore. So there's no additional issue here that we can see. This area, it's adjacent parking in this back corner here. I think, we share the concerns with regard to the neighbor, and I think through landscaping, the plan is just to have louvered openings to allow for the circulation of air through this particular side. We've got openings on the Cedar Street side throughout the courtyard, so there'll be flow through there. And again, I think from a parking count standpoint, we're not increasing the number of spaces by a substantial amount, certainly that currently already exist. So that would be my comment for that, and I'm not sure if that helps answer the question, but that was our thoughts.
Yeah, I think, Rich, just to add to that, it's covered parking, but it really is open air parking, just the same as really what exists on site today.
So I guess the reality of the situation is on two levels of parking. If like worst case scenario, all cars were backed in, people wanted to warm up their cars before going to work in the morning. There could be exhaust just kind of coming out the side of the building towards that residence. That is what I think the abutter's concerned about. That's what I'm concerned about as on the planning board. Like I don't want I want to be sure we're not we're maintaining a safe environment for that abutter and even potentially the residences of this new structure. Like that's why I was thinking if there's any test or any way to know for sure, like or if there's just standards that like the house to the like I said, the left side of this image is be no more than 10 feet away from the outer edge of that wall is my understanding.
So for you, Mr. Chair, just from my understanding, having consulted with the architect at the office, is that the building code does cover the difference between an open air parking deck, which has certain standards for ventilation, and a actual parking garage, which would require mechanical ventilation. So there's a certain area of openness, and maybe Mr. Rankin can discuss that a little bit. But based off of that openness, it's deemed to be safe. As far as like exhaust spilling out of the garage, the chemicals in exhaust are lighter than air. They fall. That's why in like a home garage, they have like a 6-inch lip. So if you are warming your car up in a garage, the carbon monoxide, the hazardous gases are heavier, more dense, and stay low. That's why the entranceway to the garage floor is usually separated by, I think it's 6 inches. It might be 4 inches by code, but usually you see about 6. So that was my understanding when I reached out to an architect, and hopefully that can be clarified.
Okay. Go, Matthew. I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I think in addition to the exhaust. I think the other concern is just light escaping through that side. So I'd be curious to see more of like how the windows are going to be designed. You mentioned the louver design. I just kind of understand how that is restricting light from spilling out of the garage to the abutters.
Yeah, I think what we're planning on currently is a vertical louver that's set at an angle so that it doesn't allow light to pass through straight. It directs it along with any sound. So there's some sound attenuation and light diversion with the louver. And the thinking is it would be that side only, that the Cedar Street side and the courtyard sides would be open.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I just want to join in and share my concerns that you have as well, Rob, in terms of the fumes coming out of the left-hand side of the diagram towards the abutters that sit there. I mean, I guess, you know, I don't have a question about the things next to the restaurant. Yes, okay, that's open air. We have open air now right there. But yeah, you have the upper garage with what, 30, I think if I can read this, 36 spaces or 30 spaces. You know, and then the other garage, I'd be interested in how is that determined that that's open air enough? And then, and again, you know, I guess I want to reiterate Rob's question about some sort of test that you can run or could run to assure the abutters that, you know, with all I due respect to the expertise of, you know, all you guys doing this, I think they might want to hear something other than trust me, it's not going to happen. So, you know, something definitive that we could do to assure them that we're not just approving this and letting it go through, and then it's going to end up being obnoxious for them.
We can certainly explore some sort of a testing element, but I think, you know, the thought is that the garage is clearly open air with, you know, a number of different circulation points, and as kind of governed by, you know, under the building code, the way that it's classified as open air. But we can certainly research that a little bit greater and provide a little bit of, you know, significant or substantial backup to that thought. But these,
yeah, and I think that the distinction in the building code is not between ground level parking lot and a garage. The distinction is between an open garage, however that's defined, and one that is not an open garage. An open garage is deemed. I think I heard this from Weston and Sampson that it's deemed to be safe. You know, through the testing and whatnot that was done before the building code was finally drafted. But it's our intention to ensure that the garage does comply with the building code with respect to being open air, in which case, you know, as of right project, as long as we're complying with the building code, it's something that we're allowed to do, and we would want to do that. And I believe that we will be able to meet that standard. However, I think that what Rich was talking about was that in the event that, you know, through the design process here, and maybe even after planning board makes a decision, if it's decided that it's not going to be open, that we decide that we're going to close it up, then we would again meet the building code requirements for an enclosed garage and have that kind of ventilation equipment. But unless it's a closed garage, unless we fail to meet the definition of an open garage, we don't have an obligation to include the ventilation because it's deemed to be safe. It's not because it doesn't matter. It does matter, but it's deemed to be safe under the building code and allowed as of right.
Sure. I'm sorry, Kathleen, I do see your hand raised. Just give me a second to just follow up here. Yeah, so deemed to be safe, is that deemed to be safe from being within the garage? Because yes, open air, I understand the definition of open air, but you have the open air issue with the abutters it's all, that's the open air side of it. So that's my concern for the abutters in Hopkinton. And then the other question, obviously, as I indicated, is, deemed to be safe. Is it deemed to be safe when you're outside the garage and, where the abutters are, or is it deemed to be safe, enough of it's going out that I can walk through the garage and I'm safe, which is, I suspect, what the criteria is.
Yeah,
That it's okay to walk in the garage, it's open air enough. If the garage is closed in, then yes, obviously you need ventilation so people can walk through the garage without choking on fumes.
In all areas of the garage, the way it's designed, it's open on three sides, which creates, a significant amount of circulation, not only to the Cedar Street side. So there's a constant bit of airflow there. The thought is not to put doors and kind of confine the garage, but but allow it to kind of self vent through the openings and the doorways. So we can certainly, quantify this. I'm sure there's some sort of a calculation, but these structures are pretty well governed through the various building codes.
Right.
Yeah, the code is very specific with regard to open versus closed, and it's all a calculation of how much open space you have, and it has to be on at least two sides. It has to make up a certain proportion of the length of each exterior wall, and the volume that can pass through the openings is calculated, and even the louvers are, subtracted from that amount. So it's a pretty in-depth calculation, but we feel we can meet it, and in the event that we don't, we will provide the required ventilation.
Yeah, I'm not arguing the definition of open air versus closed air. I'm just concerned with where the fumes are going in this open air thing. Yes, I have no doubt that you guys comply to all the regulations and definitions and things like that. So, but anyway, all right, thank you.
And conceptually, the building code is not just designed to protect the people within the garage. Obviously, when you're venting through the various floors, thought was given to the building code of where that gas is going, and so I think that it does contemplate neighbors who are going to be near these kind of garages being in a safe situation.
And as I said, in our case, it's if we're ventilating, it's going through the roof. There's no other options.
If we mechanically ventilate.
All right. Kathleen, if you'd like to unmute, state your name and address, and I think you'd have a comment or something you'd like to say.
Sure. Kathleen Reel. I'm the property owner at 8 Cedar Street, and that's the property that's the abutting properties in the north of the proposed building. I just really want to let everyone know that the proximity of my building to the property line is about 6 inches. So there's not a lot of space on my side that I can do much to. So I'm really counting on you folks to kind of make this right on your end. No pun intended, but on your end, sitting behind a desk, and your end right here on this property. But I'm really concerned about the fumes. I'm concerned about the lights, and I'm concerned about the sounds of this parking garage. It's not a parking lot. It's a parking garage. I don't care if it's an open parking garage or a closed parking garage. It's a garage. Sounds in parking garages, whether it be open or, enclosed, amplify. And that's just the way it is. Every beep, every car starting, every horn that blows, every tire squeal is going to be noise. The lights, 24/7 lights are going to be in this parking garage. And needless, it's 2 levels. It's not just a 1-level parking lot. It's 2 levels. The second floor of this building is a family's home. There's no air conditioning on the second floor of this house. So people use open windows in the summer. I can't stress enough, the 2-level parking garage is just going to be too much 10 feet away. So we just can't be saying, oh, maybe we might need ventilation on the roof. Maybe we might not need ventilation on the roof. Oh, there's going to be some trees, or we're thinking about doing levers. We need to figure this out. My take on it, I would love to see the whole thing pushed back. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's what I'd like to see happen. Second thing, I'd like to see no cars parked facing my building. So I don't know what we can do here, but it's 2 levels. No tree is going to help a second floor bedroom when there's a car parked 10 feet away.
All right. Thanks, Kathleen. Let's continue through these comments, and unless anyone has anything else about the ventilation, that comment, let's keep going.
Okay, then that said, no changes to the floor plans at this point. There was a discussion, I think, with regard to the peer review that they were looking for us to provide a roof plan where we would show potential roof equipment. And in this particular slide, we're showing heat pump condensing units that are set in arrays along the corridor sides of the building. There's a center utility distribution wall, if you will. And so these condensing units will sit on bases and feed in from the utility services. We've got some ventilation for the elevator shafts here, and we've got some ERV units, energy recovery ventilators that occur potentially in these locations. So these will sit on the flat roof. Our flat roof drains to internal drains and then down and out to storm. So that was the purpose of providing this particular plan. And then I think there was also a discussion with regard to building height and the fact that we have a mean grade elevation of 443.7 feet, which we've established. And I think Eric has calculated that and provided the calculations of how we arrived at that mean grade. And we're showing our roof height at 478.7 feet. And I think the reviewer was concerned that during construction, there was really no tolerance for meeting the maximum height of 35 feet, which it is exactly. It's been our intent to try to maximize the height of the ceiling, floor to ceiling height between on both the second and third levels of the units to get as close to 9 feet as we can within the units. I'm not sure we're going to actually achieve that, depending on ductwork, sprinklers, mechanical systems, and so on. But we didn't want to cut ourselves short, and we're just trying to maximize the floor-to-floor height within this area. So that's where we came up with this particular dimension, the 478.7, which is exactly the 35 feet above mean grade. And then we've got our decorative parapets and our roof equipment, which sits on the flat roof above that.
Hold on 1 second, Richard. John, is the maximum height? What about the roof equipment? I thought that is part of the height of the building, or am I mistaken?
So usually mechanical equipment up top, if it's not viewable from the street, is not usually considered part of the height. So they could either fence it off or put it in the center of the building so it's not viewable from the street.
Okay. All right, continue, Richard. Sorry.
Well, I think based on our animation, we're never going to see any rooftop equipment. The only possibility, and I've looked at it through the animation, is that potentially up by the town hall, as you crest and start coming down the hill, there's the potential to see, perhaps on this particular end, you might see something, but I doubt it. So we've tried to tuck it into the center of the building as much as we can. And I don't think that stuff's going to be visible.
This is another question, I think, for John. I'm just not expert enough on this at all to know, like, when there's a grade change from one end of the building to the other, and I get what a mean is, but calculating the building height, how is that? How should we think about that as board members? I think I'm trying to get clarification for all of us.
So there is a calculation in the zoning bylaw of how to take the mean height. It's kind of involved. I can pull it up if you want. But I mean, they're not, to my knowledge, not requesting a waiver for height.
No, I know, but
so like it doesn't like if they don't conform to the plans and they don't conform to the zoning, the building permit's not going to be approved. So I don't think it's really within the board's concern to make sure that they're adhering to the zoning in that regard, because they're not asking for a waiver, right? I understand the concern about the height in general, but if they don't meet the height calculation, they're just not going to get a building permit. So they're not going to be able to.
Understood.
But if you want, I can pull up the definition in the zoning bylaw.
No, I'm okay unless anybody on the board wants it. I'm okay. All right, Matthew, go ahead.
I'm just on that note. Like one of the comments was that there's basically no tolerance for the construction. If it's high, if there's an issue with the construction, it goes slightly higher. What's the remedy? They just need to fix it before they move on.
Yeah, I think we'll clearly make sure that the building won't start and all of a sudden become taller than what we think it is. So we'll make sure that that is, well verified, pre-construction.
Right, and I think what the reviewer suggested for the board to consider was having an as-built done subsequent to construction. I don't think we want to wait that long. I think what's going to happen is just the construction documents are going to show that the roof height is not going to exceed the 35 feet, and we'll build it accordingly. We may, depending on how things shake out, we may build in a little bit of tolerance there, but we're going to be pretty close to the 35. I think that's pretty well.
And to date, through detailed survey work from Bowler, we've got a good sense on where that mean average grade is, which kind of drove a lot of the early design.
Through you, Mr. Chair. My experience, Tony Capchetti with Weston & Sampson. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier, but my experience has been the construction documents usually do build in some tolerances. It's just to note that, and there's nothing that you can't stop someone from pushing the limit. You can just check for compliance, and that was the recommendation that an as-built be required and require verification of building height just to make sure it conforms to the zoning prior to occupancy.
Okay. Just moving on, that really concluded our response to the peer review comments. And next, if I could just take a minute and walk you through some elevation changes that were generated based on the design review board's recommendations from our November 12th meeting. They issued I think they issued a letter. I think the board may have it. And in it, they suggested adding more brick, utilizing wall wash style lighting. We had a discussion with them as we were, reviewing the design, and we suggested perhaps that exploring detail options for the pilasters may make some sense and help alleviate some of their concerns with regard to an overall design and perhaps the use of the composite siding in various areas. So what we did was we modified the elevation. This is the south elevation, and what we're showing is more accentuated piers. We've kind of lost the siding and gone in with smooth panels and trimmed the corner boards and so on. We've taken a look at the coloration and tried to keep it a little bit more uniform, at least on this elevation. We've also done that with the brick on the piers on this corner element. We had 2 tones of brick there. I think we decided as a team that maybe it's better to keep it all one color and still maintain the profiles of the piers. We've added a little bit of detail with regard to the rusticated stone base and really accentuated the piers, creating a rhythm here on the south elevation and taking these light fixtures. We had some period light fixtures that maybe weren't maybe the best option, and then took the recommendation of the design review board to have some up down lighting on these piers to kind of accentuate those pilasters. So that was the south elevation. On the west elevation, there was just kind of similar comments. They were looking for a little bit more masonry, that period lighting again, and then some attention to the pilasters. So this is a revision based on those comments, where we've really thought as a team that creating a more substantial kind of stone base, given that this is 2 levels of parking here, that it made more sense to use masonry and some stucco panels in between. Again, these will all be screened. The idea was here to add some brick elements to try to keep this brick rhythm going as you head north on Cedar Street. And again, we've kind of taken the lead from the south elevation to accentuate these piers. I think with that, I'll thank the board and I'll turn it back to Neil to see if he has any concluding remarks, and then we can open up to more questions.
Well, there were several other comments, and you know, to the extent that we didn't just discuss them, we're in agreement with the concept from Weston and Sampson, which is to have these items identified as conditions in any approval. The only comment that might be a little different was the Historic Commission comment asking that we provide a copy of the reconsideration by the Historic Commission. And since receiving this, I have been in communication with staff and made sure that they have both of the notices releasing the demolition delays on both of the properties. And those are now among the documents that are before you in your file. But other than that, that is what we have. So we look to the board for some direction, whether you'd like some to have questions, or if you need anything else from us.
Robbie, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. These images are obviously very illustrative of the project, but what during or even after construction, there's telephone poles on both sides along Cedar Street and along Main Street. What's going to happen to the telephone poles in front of this building on those 2 streets?
I believe the telephone poles on Main Street are going away.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So there are some existing telephone poles, and some are even actually in the street as we speak. Those are as part of the DOT improvement project supposed to be removed and sent underground. And then there's about midway back on Cedar Street, they'll also be put underground. So about the back half of Cedar North, there will be above ground poles as they exist today.
And not that I'm a expert on, I didn't measure anything, but there seems to be one right where like the driveway, the exit of the garage will be. I just don't know have you looked at that? Like what happens in the interim during construction? Like,
yeah, we located all of the various poles and identified, a safe distance to be able to work and complete the building in the event that the poles were not to be removed.
All right.
And Eric, I don't recall exactly what that safe distance is. Is it 15 feet or X amount of feet from the top of the pole? But whatever that distance was, we had identified them, measured, and made sure that we had the clearance.
That's right. Yep. We're holding 10 feet, but we've got greater separation than that. And again, the closest poles are intended to be removed, but even if they weren't, we've got the minimum separation needed. And I believe representatives from the utility company were at least one of the pre-application meetings we had with the town as well. So been well discussed, kind of in the weeds with them.
All right, Vic, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. Well, the view is pretty good from the street view, but I was just more looking that can we have the view from the abutter sides as well as the other two sides, which we are talking about. So to get a feel of it, the complete view of the building on the four sides would be helpful. That way we understand that, and the gap where the property line ends and where the other line starts, so that do we have enough setbacks? Because the concern is coming from there's no setback, and we're like maximizing the building of the space in the lot, which is they have a right to do that. While I'm not saying that, but just to have a better understanding.
Yeah, the early elevations, I'm not sure if these newer renderings have made it to the other two sides of the building, but the early submission package should have all four sides, so you get a sense of the building. Where we make a cosmetic change to this side will be applied to all four sides of the building. As far as the Cedar Street side next to the abutter, there was a pretty significant landscape plan that Matt Merva from Bowler Engineering had put together. He spoke about that at the last hearing, but that's as robust of a lining of screen trees as we can fit in that distance. For setbacks, we're not looking for any waivers or variances, not looking to encroach further than what's allowed. But we did look to really do it as heavy of a screen along that Cedar Street side.
One thing I had asked about at the very first time you were before the board is a shade analysis for the abutters. Has there been any progress made?
Yeah, I'll answer that. Yes, we've done one. We have not submitted it yet. Still reviewing it, but we could. I think if the applicant's up to it, we could certainly pass that along.
Yeah, we can share or even speak to it. I'm not sure if you have it to share this evening, Rich, but
I probably dig it up.
Yeah, why don't you put it up, Rich?
Kathleen, I'll get to you in 1 second. I see your hand is raised on the Zoom.
Can we see that?
Yes.
Yep.
So we've got a series of plans that show shade. Obviously, north is up, south is down, and this happens to be December 20th, 2025 at 8 a.m. in the morning. We've got a series of them. This shows December 20th at noontime. As you can see, with the southern sun, these buildings all cast shadows to the north, typically. Mm-hmm. This is the 6 o'clock hour in December. This is June. This is at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is June at noontime. June at, I guess more like 4 p.m.
George, the northerly shade was most severe kind of midwinter months, late afternoon. Was that correct?
Well, depending. Certainly the winter months, midday casts the straightest shadow towards the north. But yeah, and in the summer months, it's less significant because the sun is high. But this is March at 4 p.m. This is a September view. 8 in the morning, noontime, and 4 p.m. So those were we basically did every quarter. Morning, noon, and dusk. And we can submit that for review.
Okay. Like I find these images helpful. One thing that I don't think people on the board or any residents in town that would be interested have a real understanding, like the corner of the building right off of the intersection. Do you have any imagery or have you done anything to scale to the buildings around it? Because like I believe it's going to be quite a bit taller than, like, there's gas stations on 2 corners. Then there's like the CVS opposite it, the dry cleaners, and then like Central Public House and the various buildings around it. That corner is going to be, I don't know, 40 feet or so from the ground, I believe, or roughly. Do you have anything to show the scale of this buildings around it?
Which is it possible to pull up that fly-through model that was previously submitted? I think that does a pretty good job showing kind of both directions up and down the street.
Sorry to put you on the spot of asking for these different things in real time.
That's all right. This was one of the pieces that we presented with the first time around. It starts up top by Town Hall and kind of moves its way down as an animation fly through all the way to the corner, and then a look back at the building.
Yep, that's be very helpful to relook at this.
So yeah, this is taken about 10 feet above the ground, so it's not quite eye level. But as you can see, the Town Hall and various retail buildings. So from a height standpoint, the building adjacent to the restaurant is almost as high, but we're getting the benefit of the street dropping off. But as you can see, looking down Cedar and then back up, we don't feel it's out of scale. It just kind of completes the corner. So it's so in terms of roof height, we're pretty much in plane with this building, which is next to the restaurant. I forget exactly who's in there. This is the Town Hall roof here. So, I think the feeling is that it's about in line with this 2-story building because the grade drops off. And it kind of, we're hoping that it completes the corner in an elegant way.
All right. I see Kathleen Reel, sorry, has her hand raised. Kathleen, go ahead.
Yes, I just had a couple of things. You said that, it completes the corner, but the front of the building supposedly is both the Main Street and the Cedar Street side. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So on the Cedar Street side, there's a 2-level parking garage that people are going to see as they coming into Hopkinton from the north. And how high is that northwest corner going to be? Not like just like in feet, like it's 35 feet at the corner of Main and Cedar, but how tall is this building going to be at the northwest corner?
I would have to measure that from grade.
You don't have any idea at all? It's going to be, how many stories is it? 4, right?
4 stories, yes. So it's in the 45-foot range. I would venture to guess
45 feet. Okay, so a 45-foot building, and it's 10.5 feet from this property, and all these trees are in there to be
I think
growing. So I was just wondering, like, how can these trees grow when it's all shaded? And I thank you for that shade study, because that really kind of showed me what I was looking for. But today I went down to Western Nurseries and I said to them, geez, dark American arborvitaes and a green giant arborvitae shrubs need to grow, and how much light do they need? And what I found out is that they need at least 6+ hours of sunlight for optimal growth. Not enough sunlight will make the trees get sparse, and they'll only get worse over time. Less light equals less leaves and less growth. And these plants, they said they would never recommend these plants for like a fully shaded area. 4 o'clock sun isn't really optimal for growing trees. So that's basically when the sun would kind of start shining down that little narrow, alleyway, if you want to call it that, between the 2 buildings. So even if they said there was full sunlight there, it would need at least 30 to 40. These trees can get up to 20 feet wide. If there's a 5-foot buffer, the trees are never going to get big enough to probably even get to a 2nd floor. So I don't know, what the solution would be. I don't know who the folks are that did your landscape design. Maybe they have some comments. Western Nurseries, I feel, is kind of, the best in the field around here. And that's why I kind of went to them rather than doing a Google search. So I don't know if you folks have any suggestions or any comments.
Well, Kathleen, happy to discuss the species of the trees with you at length at any given time. I don't recall, without the landscape plan being pulled up, what Matt Merva had designed, but similarly, Matt's pretty well skilled, really well versed in species and what's going to work where and what's healthy. The idea was, thin caliper with maximum height to be able to screen that side. So I don't know, Eric, if you have that plan or species of tree that he had in mind, but
does he know though? Like, I know that there's like a buffer, but does he know that my building is so close to the property line? Did they see that on the plan, or are they just looking at like the property that you own?
No, do you see the plan that's pulled up currently?
Do I see it?
Yeah.
We're still seeing the end of the animation. It's paused at the end of the animation. Yeah.
I'm seeing the new.
Yeah, that's the one I saw. That's exactly the one that where I got the dark American arborvitaes, which should be TD2, a green giant arborvitae, which is TOG, and the Cunningham white rhododendrons, which is RC2, with a couple of the compact summer suites in the front of the building, which I really wasn't as much concerned about those because they were basically at the street.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the species. We've got over 20 feet of separation between the buildings. I know you keep alluding that they're very, very close, but there is plenty of separation between. And again, the intent of the arborvitaes, they are going to, grow tall, but it's not the intent that they're going to grow to 40 feet. It's just to take some of the scale out of the building and to provide as much screening as we can.
What is the do you see where it says like 4 RC2? What is the approximate distance from the property line to the building at like RC2, where it says 4 RC2? Like,
yeah, so I'll just tell you, this is 10.5 feet at the thinnest.
So it's 10.5 feet there.
So you're looking for that dimension?
Roughly, yeah.
Let's see if we can get you a quick 3 scale. Okay. Let's just double check this dimension. No, the scale is not right. Bear with me. Oh, 20 scale. Apologies. Okay. So you have 15 feet at this dimension.
Okay, so 15 feet there. It gets narrow. So roughly the whole, like the way the property line is, the distance between the structure to the north, Kathleen's property, is basically the same the whole length of her property. The distance from that house to this structure is going to be, if this scales right, it looks like 15 feet. I mean, 20 feet roughly.
Yeah, I mean, I just estimated this generally as
because
her location. I imagine it's probably 10 feet off of the property line, so probably 25 feet from face to face.
I think that's part of the problem, is because as a board, we went for a site walk, and it feels like that structure is much more like 3 feet off the property line.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if you take a look, you see the water service coming into the property? On the Google image, you can see that. That's probably a foot or two off the corner of her house.
Yep.
To give you a rough idea. I'm just looking from a Google Street View image, but you can see the blue mark in the road, and that looks like it's going towards the front right corner of the dwelling. And obviously it wouldn't go through the foundation, so it has to be at least a foot, maybe 2 feet off that corner.
Well, I'm just trying to get it. Does that mean her house is there? Like, I'm trying to get a.
No, the water meter has to come in. The water line has to come into the basement of the house, so it's in front of the house.
Yeah, I'm saying it's probably from the corner of your house, a couple feet in from that corner. So your house would be standing in the street. The front corner would be to the right of that water service. So if you move that box down to the something similar to that.
The water meter is at the far left-hand corner of the basement, so probably right around there.
On the front wall or side wall?
Yeah. So
the front wall.
So I do think there is, like, I'm not a tree expert by any means, but it's not 50 feet. It's, I'd say, less than 20, or 20 or less would be my guesstimate along that whole stretch. For significant sized trees to grow, I think that is probably a stretch with the amount of shade it will get. But before I go on, is anyone, like, we've been discussing this now for about 55 minutes, I think, and we only had budgeted a half hour. So I want to ask the board, do you guys have any questions? Lucia, go ahead.
I was looking at the comments regarding the trash receptacles. I saw that there was no dumpster indicated for a building with 60 units, as well as 1 to 3 businesses, I think was what we heard on our site walk. So I'm just curious to know how that is going to work by rolling out trash receptacles that will fit enough trash for all of those residents as well as businesses onto the sidewalk without presumably blocking the sidewalk so that people can still use it.
Rich, do you want to talk to that through the site plan, or do you have a better footprint?
Yeah, I've got, let's see if I can get the floor plans up. So again, on the first floor, we've got storage for trash here and here. And this is some vertical shafts that feed this location. I think it's all has to do with the frequency of pickup and the operational requirement from the vendor. Brendan, you may have a little bit more input on this with regard to the frequency, but the idea would be that potentially create a little bit more space here for pickup or adjacent to the entrance. But the idea is that we need to obviously let those vendors be able to pick this stuff up. And it's typically a drive-by situation. They're not going to be able to get into the garage. So we've done this on several developments previously. And you just have to allow enough space for the storage and enough space for pickup.
Yeah, we're working through those details now with the third-party management company that had some thoughts as to frequency, and they've got pretty good calculations for units this size as to how much trash needs to be handled and the best way to handle it. So.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, so I have a question. So with that, the dumpsters or whatever that you have there, I guess my question is what will actually be there? And is it going to be something that's going to contain this, excuse me, the smell and or any pests that might arise? Excuse me.
Yeah, we have a dedicated room that's going to be enclosed. That's going to house the trash, and then it'll come out in bins and be flipped into a container.
Okay, thank you.
So, just so I'm clear, so in Hopkinton, like every home, everyone has the trash situation is this one like container for trash, is one container for recyclables. And so in this building, there's going to be, I forget the exact number of units, but is everyone going to have a trash canister and a recycle canister? And is the expectation all of those are going to go to the street side?
No, these are shared canisters within these enclosed trash rooms to be handled through the management company as far as pickup and removal.
Okay, so nobody's going to have their own. It's going to be like, I don't know, 8, 10, whatever the right number of trash cans, and then 8 or 10, whatever the right number of recycle bins are to handle the trash. But it's still a lot of.
There's a good bit of trash, and that's a good part of the logistics, and that's where kind of the third-party management companies really have that under control. There's certain costs associated with how many times they pick up, which determines how many cans that we want to have based on the, assumed amount of trash.
I have, I don't know if anybody is aware, but like in downtown, I'm thinking from like the common through like the police station, I have never really seen, at least on Main Street, and I know this is the Cedar Street side, but I've never seen trash cans on the street or recycle bins. Is anyone else? Am I wrong? Anyone on the board?
No, I've never seen anything. Well, there are some trash bins in the common. They're set, but I've never seen them anywhere close to full.
No, but I've never seen like people put on Main Street in like what I would call our downtown area. I've never seen a like a blue recycle
No.
thing or a green trash can.
Rob, I believe they all have their own dumpsters, large ones on their property.
Like in general, I think I don't know that the board has any control over this per se, or how much, like in terms of how to get rid of trash. But I know in general, residents are not going to want to see 10 to 20 trash cans on the street side.
There will not be trash cans on the street. The trash cans are going to be isolated to these trash rooms.
And somebody
at an
will walk.
appropriate amount. Then the service comes, they grab the barrels, they put it right in the truck, and then they bring the barrels back, put them neatly back into the trash room.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because
And the frequency of that will be determined by the amount of trash, and the amount of cans will be determined by, the amount of units. And it'll, this is a draft plan that has a little more development to be done to it. The rooms may need to be slightly larger. But this gives an idea of kind of that clean space trash room.
All right. What I'd like to do, Lucia, go ahead.
I just want to get a better understanding given what he said. So then the bins won't be outside of the trash room. When they come to pick them up, they're going to go grab them and then take care of the trash, or the bins will be brought out prior to them getting picked up?
They will arrive to the site. They will grab the bins from the rooms, put the trash in the truck, put the bins back in the rooms, and take the trash away. They won't be sitting on the side waiting for the truck to come.
Yeah, people would not like that.
Then my follow-up question would be just in terms of access, because you don't want a truck sitting on 85 for any length of time, picking up and blocking traffic.
These are
especially when it's one lane of traffic.
Yeah, this type of kind of boutique service is typically done with smaller trucks that are a little more accessible.
Okay.
Vic, go ahead.
Right. Just adding to the same topic on the location of this one. When you say even the boutique trucks, but the entrance, where I believe at the entrance of this building, left side is the trash as per the plan. I mean, the location itself is little. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if even the boutique trucks comes in, they have to park it somewhere. And what I'm hearing from the builders is that the cleaning itself looks like maybe it sounds to me like there's a monstrous work but it's, I don't know. I mean, maybe location needs to be changed that's my view of the trash truck placement. And second is that I'm still not sure how the pest control is maintained. That would be helpful. I mean, how do we if due to this, if anything happens, how is the pest control maintained? Is there a plan as such?
These trash rooms tend to be, maintained and cleaned and, really where they're part of shared public space. It's by no means meant to be left in any sort of disarray. If ever there were to be any sort of a pest issue, that would be something that the association from the building, the management company would certainly address. But I think in general, while there are still some logistics to be worked out exactly where the doorways are and where the bins go, it certainly is meant to be a clean operation and they will not be littered along the side of the road.
All right. At this time, John, from your perspective, is there any thing new or any other information you'd like to share from like a staff viewpoint?
No new information. I will just, in terms of process, say that it would be helpful, since we just got the letter from Weston Sampson recently, to have a chance to actually review that letter, incorporate the items into the conditions, and then have a full condition finding memo, I guess, for next meeting. Just because it was a tight timeline, so I just want to make sure, since this is a larger project, still outstanding comments, that I have the time to accurately go through all the comments in the letter and get some good conditions and findings for the board.
That's what I'm aiming for as well. Is the applicant amenable to continuing this discussion to our next meeting?
Yes, we're amenable to that with the idea that it allows the time for a more thorough review. John, is that what your thoughts are?
Not so much a review, just, we've got standard conditions in the memo. The board can read them. There are some conditions that the peer review consultant put in their letter. Those are not incorporated, so we'd have to basically scramble and write some language now to get conditions approved for tonight's meeting, which I would just not be super comfortable with on a project such as this, right? So I'd just like a little bit more time to actually kind of go through all the conditions, go through the findings, make sure the wording is correct, make sure the language is correct for the board to just kind of go through the whole decision process at the next meeting.
Well, that makes sense. I think I'd also would like to suggest if Kathleen, the abutter, if perhaps we could set aside some time and speak with Matt Merva, the landscape designer, just to see if we can make you comfortable with the type of plan and plantings that he has, and kind of reassure the health of the trees and kind of the thought process there.
All right. John, when is our next meeting? I don't know off the top of my head.
January 6th, so next year.
And do we get to continue a decision deadline or decision?
I am willing to guess that's a yes. Let me see what the date currently is. Actually, no. Well, yes, for the stormwater management permit. Site plan is 90 days. So currently for stormwater management permit, the decision is due December 24th. So I would just ask that be continued to like a week after the 6th. So the 13th, I guess, would be the date.
All right. I'd like to, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for 4852. And is it 8 is what's this?
6 Cedar.
In 6 Cedar Street to January 6th, 2025. And the decision deadline for the stormwater management permit to January 13th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Parker. All right, roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vikasath Prati.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Last project on our agenda for this evening is 18 Cedar Street. So I see Mr. Nealon on. Would you like to? I know we went for a site walk just the other day, so we we saw you there. But do you want to give us any update to the project, or is there any new news?
Sure. Yeah. No real update to share. We're just really looking for the ability to park cars in between the building and A Street and Cedar Street. And we need a special permit from this board in order to do so. So we had some good clarification on layout of the lot and where things are going to be positioned at the site walk. And if there's any questions or clarifications needed that have come up since then, we're happy to answer those. We have the applicant as well as the architect, Carl Oldenburg, on the call. Happy to clear anything up.
So I'll give my comments. Well, actually, before I say what I'm thinking, anyone on the board have any comments or questions? So seeing none, I'll give you my commentary. So in general, I think it's a I like the. I think it'd be a good project for Hopkinton. Actually, so that's my opinion. I just want to be. It's very easy for. It's easier for the board, I think, when there's a definitive yes or no. This is kind of like based on sentiment, the way the bylaw is written. If it's the proposed parking now, so this is the language of the bylaw, just for everybody's benefit. No off-street parking shall be located between the principal building and Main Street. So this isn't on Main Street, so that doesn't apply. Off-street parking may be located between the principal building and other streets only upon the grant of a special permit by the planning board. That's us. So the planning board may grant the special permit only if it finds that the proposed parking will not be detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood, and the proposed location and design of the parking will enhance the downtown streetscape. For the purposes of this subsection, the term streetscape shall refer to all elements that constitute the physical makeup of a street, and that as a group, define its character, including building, facades, frontage, and placement. The paved street, street furniture, landscaping, including trees and other plantings, awnings, signs, and lighting. So considering that, like, what does the board think? Is this meet those criteria? That's what I'm looking to get kind of a assessment of. Does anyone have an opinion? Like, I think it's going to come down to our opinion is what I'm getting at. Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it does meet it. It's hiding the parking. It's got some nice landscaping up front, revitalizing a house that's not in the best shape. I think it makes a lot of sense.
All right, thanks, Matthew. Lucia, go ahead.
I did have a question because I don't know if I've seen this before in my short time on the planning board, but the request for a waiver for an environmental analysis. In reading that, I had a question of how often are those waivers granted? And also for a project like this, where they're building, I think it's approximately a 4,000 square foot home, and they are paving a large portion of the lot. Is that something that we would waive when you're considering that includes groundwater, and you're also on a steep part of town?
John, I'm looking for guidance from you. I don't know.
So this waiver is granted, I would say, somewhat frequently. I wouldn't say all the time. I wouldn't say maybe 50%, maybe a little bit less than that, but usually for larger projects. But I also want to remind the board that the decision that you're making on the special permit is really just to have parking in between the building and a street. It doesn't involve the building itself. It doesn't involve the design of the parking, aside from circulation and aesthetics. The special permit is not designed to look at the environmental impact of the development itself. That's kind of in the realm of site plan. In the ZBA give a special permit for the use, that would be really related to that approval rather than the planning board approval. So yes, that environmental assessment is waived relatively frequently for projects that are small enough. And I think the board should really look to the special permit criteria for a decision rather than kind of the whole project and if it would fit.
So just for clarity. Yeah, so Lucia, does that answer your question?
I guess it sounds like you don't think an environmental analysis is necessary when what we are considering is whether or not to allow parking between the building and the street.
Yeah, if you would think that the location of the parking between a building and the street versus a building and not a street is different versus how it relates to the environmental impact, then I think you could request an assessment. If this parking, because it's between a street and a building, is different than a parking lot not between a street and a building, right?
So if I could ask a follow-up to that.
Go ahead.
at what point is something like that done on a project like this?
I mean, it's up to the board. I don't want to guide the board in telling you don't have to do this or you don't have to require it. If you all think that this is appropriate, then it's within the board's jurisdiction to require an environmental analysis.
Yeah, Lucia, the way I'd put it, like, I don't think that's, yes, it's part of it, but it's like the main thing we got to get to is I would say, the approving it, and then we can decide on that. I would say as a secondary, we got to either decide, yes, this meets the bylaw criteria, or no, it doesn't. And if you want to if you don't want to grant that waiver, we can vote on it and say no. But that's my sentiment, I guess.
Okay.
So I think to clarify for everybody, my understanding is like if this property was just on Cedar Street and it wasn't on A Street, so if A Street wasn't there and there's just another home next to it, this wouldn't be a required, they wouldn't be before us right now. John, can you just confirm my understanding is correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. So if A Street wasn't there and it was just the next house was just the adjoining property, they wouldn't need to be before us. So it comes back to the language of the bylaw. I know Matthew thinks he's in favor. What is anyone else thinking? I want to get some general sentiment, and then we can go to potentially a vote, or we can discuss secondary things, what I would call, I guess they're not really secondary, but things like Lucia mentioned. Go ahead, Elise.
I'm also in favor. I think that this will improve the streetscape and make that corner look a lot nicer and cleaner. So I think I'm in favor of granting the special permit.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Jane.
I think it also is tastefully done, and I think it's also going to be a big improvement for the downtown area. So I would be in favor of it.
All right. Anyone else have any thoughts? All right. In general, I think it's a good project for the town. And so that I'm trying not to impact my bias. I'm trying to decide purely on the language of the bylaw, which I think is our role. And I tend to think it, assuming they implement the streetscape as they talked about, it would provide a kind of a better, a more attractive street scape. I don't know how else to put it, but so I'm generally in favor. One question I did have, John, and this is maybe more just my curiosity than anything, is if they put a 4-car garage and didn't have exposed parking, could they just do that anyway? Like where the parking generally is, they only need to require 1 space per unit. If they just put a 4-car garage, that would be a viable option, right?
Probably. I mean, possibly. I'm just going to look to zoning to see how that is written, but that being allowed wouldn't really change their compliance with other things. So like that might push them over the maximum lot coverage.
Okay.
It might push them over on another dimensional requirement, right? It's now an accessory building if it's not attached. And if it is attached, that might even cause other problems in terms of dimensional requirements. So yeah, I'd have to look at the zoning bylaws and see how it's written, if it's a parking area or a parking lot, because if it's a parking area, a garage might be considered a parking area by zoning definitions. But if it specifically says parking lot, then maybe a garage is exempt. But I still don't think it would be an easy path for them in terms of other requirements.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of go through the outline here, and so we can work towards a vote, and we can discuss these things along the way. John, before I do that, do you have any other comments about I think you've covered it in between last hearing and this one, but do you have anything else to add?
No, the only thing I would say is they've already got their other approvals from the ZBA. So this is, aside from the building permit, the last approval that they would need. So it's kind of the final review.
Okay, so I'm just going to read 3.7, the decision criteria. For this special permit, if the board is able to find that the proposed parking area will meet the following, the board should approve the application of the special permit. So here's the two things I already mentioned, but the proposed parking area will not be detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood, and the proposed location and design of the parking will enhance the downtown streetscape. The board should also consider the standard special permit findings when making this decision. And so here, 3.8, Lucia, I think we can talk about the waivers. So the requested waivers, I'm just going to read them. Submission requirements: to not provide an environmental analysis, to not provide a traffic impact analysis, to not provide the 2 paper copies of the 24x36 plan set, to not provide peer review fee of $2,000. So this is kind of we've already discussed. This is kind of an unusual situation, but in particular, Lucia, the environmental analysis. Do you think? I guess we have to vote on the waivers, but it's just a matter of if you want to single out that that waiver when we vote, or if we can do them as one group, I guess.
I think it would depend on what, like, if I'm the only one who has concerns about that, then I'd say we vote on all of them. But if anyone else has concerns, then we can pull it out. And
through the chair, just a comment on that. Typically, the environmental analysis are not very detailed. The board can decide what would be included in them, and they're not super technical. It's just, there might be more land cleared, or in this case, it would be we're paving an area that's not previously paved, and therefore infiltration is going to be impacted, and it kind of just goes over that general environmental impact. Unless the board has specific questions, this site might have soil issues, so we want to know how infiltration is going to work on there in certain regard versus something else. But in this situation, it would really probably be just like a general environmental analysis of how a parking lot will impact the environment of downtown. So I'm not trying to make it seem like it's not really worthwhile, because it is a worthwhile exercise for certain projects. This one, I think, might be a little over the top if that's the case. And I don't think you'd really be satisfied with what that environmental analysis would cover. It'd be pretty bare bones, my guess would be.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. One of the other waivers you mentioned was a traffic impact, and I wasn't able to make the site walk. So does those who are able to make the site walk, are you guys all satisfied that this isn't going to be a traffic problem with a parking lot or all this provided in downtown?
So there's an existing house there. I don't know if it's occupied or not, but for argument's sake, let's say it is. So this is basically replacing a house with what is visually going to look like a home from the street, but it's basically going to be 4 one-bedroom units. I don't think 4 one-bedroom units, like my personal opinion, deserves a traffic analysis, but if you do,
well, I wasn't sure exactly where it was situated relative to downtown, so
So like going down Cedar Street towards Southborough. Yeah. So where Hopkins and Drug is, it's about like past the Hopkins and Drug property. It's about 4 houses on the right after that.
Okay.
So through the chair, just in the same regard or same situation as the environmental impact analysis. The traffic impact analysis would really just be looking at what is the traffic impact of locating the parking between A Street and the building, because the use itself was already approved by the ZBA. So the use is allowed. It would just be, can that parking area be located between the building and A Street? And that would be the boundaries of the planning board's decision of a traffic analysis and environmental impact analysis.
All right. So procedurally, should I read should we vote on the waivers first, or should I read the findings or the conditions? I'm always confused procedurally how to do this the best.
So Rob, usually you would do the waivers and then the findings and then the approval with the conditions.
Okay.
Actually, Rob, I have one last question, if you don't mind, through the chair.
No, yeah, Karen, go ahead.
So I think this was actually a question, I'll give it to my colleague Lucia had brought up at another point in time, one of our other meetings, is will the waiver of all of these, or all of these waivers set a precedence going forward? Or are we just always able to say yay or nay, depending on whatever the situation is?
I don't think so I am generally concerned about that in some instances. I don't think this is one of them.
Okay.
It'd be my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board confirm that the application is submitted, the application submitted is considered a complete application by granting waivers for the submission requirements as follows. The applicant is not required to provide an environmental analysis. The applicant is not required to provide a traffic impact analysis. The applicant is not required to provide 2 paper copies of the full-size plan set, and the applicant is not required to provide the $2,000 deposit for third-party peer review.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Parker. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
No.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
No.
Vikas South Prati.
No.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right. Proposed findings. All right, reading section 3.9. The proposed parking area will not be detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed location and design of the parking will enhance the downtown streetscape. All applicable criteria and standards set forth in this chapter have been satisfied, and grant of the special permit will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this chapter. So 3.10. Actually, maybe it's better that we vote on the findings. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Parker. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vikas South Prati.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right. Now I'm on section 3.10, reading the proposed conditions. It's relatively short by our standards, so I'll go through these. A town clerk certified version of this decision shall be recorded at the Middlesex County South Registry of Deeds prior to the issuance of a building permit for the work that is subject to this decision. Number 2, the Director of Municipal Inspections inspects projects under construction for compliance with the approved decisions. If the Director of Municipal Inspections determines at any time before or during construction that a registered professional engineer or other such outside professional is required to assist with the inspections of any component of the approval, the applicant shall be responsible for the cost of those inspections. All construction activities shall adhere to applicable law, state and federal laws and regulations regarding noise, vibration, dust, sedimentation, and the use of interference with or blocking of town roads. The applicant shall be responsible for mitigating all construction-related impacts, including erosion, siltation, and dust control. The applicant shall maintain all portions of any public way used for construction access free of soil, mud, or debris deposited due to use by construction vehicles associated with the projects, and shall regularly sweep such areas as directed by the Director of Municipal Inspections in consultation with the DPW Director. Construction may occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. pursuant to Chapter 141, Article 1 of the Town of Hopkinton General Bylaws. The applicant developer shall provide the principal planner with a project point of contact and contact information prior to the issuance of a building permit. This point of contact information shall be kept current through correspondence to the principal planner until the final certificate of occupancy is issued or construction is otherwise considered complete.
Through the chair, you may have misread 3 and skipped local and just read law.
Okay, let me reread item 3. All construction act. So I strike item 3 from before and reread it here. All construction activities shall adhere to applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations regarding noise, vibration, dust, sedimentation, and the use of interference with or blocking of town roads. I almost made the same mistake twice. All right. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve the special permit with the following conditions as they were previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Parker. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vika South Prati.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing for 18 Cedar Street.
So moved.
Second.
Smith. Thanks, Parker. Same roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vika South Prati.
Yes.
And Rob
Yes.
Benson is a yes. All right. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you all very
Jack.
much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye. All right. So our next meeting is January 6th. I don't have any other thing on our agenda so without further ado, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn for this evening.
Rob, before you do that, can I just say, please come in and sign the Form E for Nebraska Street. We'll be in until tomorrow until 7, and then Wednesday until 4:30, Thursday until 4:30, and then Friday until 2.
And is there any closure between the Christmas week or New Year's?
There will be. We don't know what it's going to look like. We assume. I mean, we're closed Christmas Day.
Yeah.
But technically, we're supposed to be there the day before and the day after. So I don't know if that's going to change.
Okay.
I would assume it's probably not going to be super open next week.
Yeah. So if we can get it done as soon as possible to get it off our plate. All right. With that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Vic. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vika South Prati.
Yes.
And Robinson is yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.
The holidays.